Ξεκινάμε με την κυρία Maura Harrigan. Είναι ιατρολόγος, ειδική στη διατροφή ογκολογικών ασθενειών. Είναι υπεύθυνη της μελέτης ΛΕΝ στην Δημόσια Σχολή Υγείας του Πανεπιστημίου Γέιλ και θα μας μιλήσει για το ελαιόλαδο, τη διατροφή και τη θεραπεία στον καρκίνο. Please.
Kalamera. I see that my notes are still in Greek, so that I'll do my best to explain. The topic of my talk is to talk about the role of nutrition in cancer care, and then highlight how important olive oil is in nutrition. Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Walking is the best medicine. The ancient Cretan diet, eat only what the land produces. Also olive oil. All of these were embedded into the Lean study. 5 years ago when we were developing the materials, and the Lean study is lifestyle, exercise, and nutrition, little did I realize that 5 years later, I'd be standing here in Greece to talk about this. So I just want to say thank you, or efharisto, for your wisdom and knowledge. Okay. Is it showing? Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. So when we talk about nutrition and cancer, we look across the cancer trajectory. It's prevention, diagnosis and treatment, and survivorship. And the role of nutrition is different in each of these phases of cancer care. So when we talk about prevention, we look at the development of cancer as a series of steps, changes in the cell over time, often years. Now, evidence-based research shows that it's the phytonutrients in plant foods that can actually disrupt this cancer development process. And to highlight olive oil, the phytonutrient grouping of polyphenols, of which there are many, well over 20, plays a critical role in disrupting this cancer process. And it's through its antioxidant properties and reducing inflammation that actually disrupt the mechanism of cancer development. So a healthy plant-based diet with olive oil as a component exerts what we call an epigenetic effect on the development of cancer and is very valuable in prevention. So this healthy diet always helps, and it's never too late to start. Now, when we talk about diagnosis and treatment, the situation changes. It's the side effects of the treatments which really become a nutrition management problem. It makes it very difficult for people to eat well and stay nourished and maintain their nutritional status. So fatigue, loss of appetite, taste changes, dry mouth, mouth sores, difficulty swallowing. And olive oil plays a very interesting role in managing these side effects. So olive oil is a very concentrated source of calories. So a very little bit gives a lot of calories. We call that that it's energy dense. So when the desire and the ability to eat is so low that every bite counts, adding olive oil to the food really enhances the calorie content and helps the person stay nourished. And then a very singular use of olive oil is that you can add drops of oil to food and it offsets this persistent metallic taste that people experience when they're in chemotherapy, and it actually makes the food more palatable. And lastly, as you know, olive oil is a lubricant, so it makes the foods moister for when you have difficulty chewing and swallowing. So you're going to see we use these principles later on in the lean study in our recipe development and in our intervention because of the properties of olive oil. Now, in survivorship, the issues are a little different. Treatment is done, but there are lingering effects from the treatment. We call these late effects. So it's early onset heart disease, diabetes, accelerated bone loss. Weight management becomes difficult, whether it's to gain weight after treatment or to lose weight or just to maintain a healthy weight. We also have the issue of what we call chemo brain. You may have heard of that. Patients call that a brain fog after treatment. And Drs. Vasilou and Practico will address brain health with olive oil following this talk. Now, also, there's the risk of cancer recurrence after treatment. And what's interesting is for many cancer survivors, this risk of recurrence turns into a fear of recurrence, and it can drive some very extreme nutrition practices in an effort to prevent cancer from returning. And one of these is overuse of dietary supplements. And I'll return to that point later. But in the lean study, we found that 83% of the participants were using dietary supplements, and not just one, multiples, 3, 4. Over 50% were using over 5 dietary supplements at a time. They interact with each other, and the supplements interact with the treatments. So this is an issue. So the role of olive oil in managing these late effects is very helpful. One, supporting heart health. And this is really dependent on its superior fat profile. It's the highest in monounsaturated fats compared to the other oils and fat sources, essential fatty acids, vitamin E and K, and again, those anti-inflammatory properties we talked about earlier. This supports heart health. When you use olive oil in cooking and recipe development, it's a very effective strategy to shift the calories away from saturated fat, which is what you try to do when you're promoting heart health. Less saturated fat, more monounsaturated fat. And also interesting, the high smoke point of olive oil reduces the risk of carcinogen production during high heat cooking. And it's for these properties that we incorporated olive oil into all our recipes that we developed for the lean study, which you'll see in a little bit. And another interesting role of olive oil is in weight management, and that comes back to, remember, it's being very energy dense or calorically dense, because as a fat source, it provides 9 calories per gram versus 4 calories per gram in protein or carbohydrate. So we manipulate the amount of olive oil in the diet to meet the weight management goals, be it weight gain or weight loss or weight maintenance. So it's the olive oil becomes the fulcrum that we use to adjust calories. So as you can see, olive oil plays a very key role and the role of nutrition in all phases of cancer care. Now, before I go into the lean study, I just have to tell this audience how we eat in the United States. We have evidence-based nutrition guidelines that are issued every 5 years, and they're called the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. It promotes a predominantly plant-based meal pattern, which is very similar to the framework of the Mediterranean diet. We just don't call it the Mediterranean diet because we have to apply this framework across the vast different cultures in the United States. And to that end, to that point, olive oil is not specifically recommended in the U.S. dietary guidelines. They recommend vegetable oils. So there's work to be needed there. We need to improve those recommendations. So the thing is, we know how to eat well. The problem is Americans just don't eat well. They get a failing grade across all age groups. About 50%, Americans eat about 50% of what they should. Now, the reason why is we've created a fast food culture in the United States that's convenient and it's cheap. and we created drive-through windows, for crying out loud. And you pull your car up and you're handed 3,000 calories of sugar, salt, and saturated fat. So it's no wonder that over 70% of adults are overweight or obese in the United States. So now we realize how poorly Americans eat. There have been issued nutrition guidelines for cancer prevention. This was in 2018 from the World Cancer Research Fund, American Institute for Cancer Research. And honestly, these recommendations really seem to be targeted for American poor eating. So you can see the first recommendation is be at a healthy weight. Second, be physically active, meaning don't go through drive-through windows. At least park the car and get out and walk. Promote a diet rich in foods that come from the earth, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. And then start limiting consumption of fast foods, burgers, red meat, reduce steaks, limit sugar beverages. It's for our love of Coke and Pepsi. Limit alcohol, and here's the underscore, do not use dietary supplements to prevent cancer. So given that we know how poorly Americans eat, right? And we know how powerful nutrition is in cancer treatment, what's surprising is in the standard of care for cancer patients, there's no nutrition education provided. There's no exercise provided. So this is missing in cancer care. So that's why we developed the LEAN study, which stands for Lifestyle, Exercise, and Nutrition. So we did this study in breast cancer patients who are undergoing chemotherapy, and half the group got the nutrition and exercise intervention for a whole year. And the other half of the group got this gold standard of care, as we know it now, which has no nutrition and no exercise. And then at the end of the study, we compare the differences between the two groups. And we're trying to measure the impact of nutrition and exercise in cancer care. And the way we're measuring it is we look at how are they completing their chemotherapy, how are they adhering to their hormonal therapy, what were their side effects and toxicities during treatment. We've done blood draws, and we'll look at blood biomarkers, looking at lipid profiles, and markers of inflammation, and we look at changes in body composition and also changes in the gut microbiome, which we do through stool samples. So what's in... So the thing is, since we know how poorly Americans eat, to get them to change it requires a lot of education. And it's a very intensive amount of counseling. It's not a one-shot deal. We do 16 sessions over the course of the year. And also with physical activity, just briefly to touch upon, we promote walking. Just like Hippocrates said, walking is the best medicine. And we do 2 strength training sessions a week. We give them a set of dumbbells. They do it at home, following videos we give them. And we give them a Fitbit and encourage them to just walk. The diet intervention is this predominantly plant-based diet that I talked about. The way I visually explain it is to fill your plate 2/3 with plant foods and 1/3 with animal foods. And that visually puts your diet in the proper proportion to be a predominantly plant-based diet. But again, we have to adapt it to the cultural foods of that particular person, and also to the household food budget. What can they afford to eat? And again, a big part of this is remember how powerful those phytonutrients are in plant foods. We really get them to understand the power of phytonutrients. And again, visually, the way we teach it is the phytonutrients are represented by the colors of the fruits and vegetables. I know this sounds very simple, but it's so powerful. So it doesn't matter if it's a fruit or a vegetable. What matters is the color. And the colors are created by clusters of these hundreds of phytonutrients So if you capture all your colors, you capture all these phytonutrients. Now, the power of that. And you do it within a week. Now, and again, there's olive oil with its polyphenols is a big component of this. Now, we adapt it to household budgets by saying, you know, this doesn't have to be fresh. It could be frozen. It can be canned. It does not have to be organic. It does not have to be non-GMO to access the power of the phytonutrients. So for many people on a very limited food budget, that enables them to consume these colors. Oftentimes people say, I can't afford to do that. So our challenge is to show them how to do that in a very economic way. So the heart of the intervention is the development of our lean recipe book. And on the cover, we have Hippocrates' quote right there, let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. And also we have olive oil on the cover. Now, so our recipes are chock full of phytonutrients, using olive oil as the fat source, and keeping the textures smooth and moist and easy to swallow. When we take a closer look at one of the recipes, you can see that they're designed to address specific side effects. So with a gingerly carrot soup, we use sweet onions, leeks, fresh ginger, fresh cinnamon, sauteed in olive oil, and that aroma helps stop nausea. So it's also the smell of the food, in addition to the oranges and the carrots that go into the soup with all the phytonutrients. Okay. So the other thing we do with these recipes is we encourage patients to share it with family and friends. So you know you have well-meaning friends who may bring over grandma's chocolate cake as a comfort food, but they're bringing in a lot of sugar, saturated fat, and salt, which is all the things we're trying to minimize during treatment. So by saying to the person, well, make me this recipe, that will help me. And they're done in batch cooking, so you get many meals out of one recipe. And but more importantly, it puts the patient in charge of what they're eating, and it creates a very healthy food environment in their home. Now, you know, what I have to say, it's very hard to measure nutrition and how people are eating. It's notorious in nutrition research. But I got to witness it as I counseled these patients. And I got to see how the person felt at the end of their treatment, doing the nutrition, using the lean recipes, walking, doing the strength training. This is what it looked like at the end. You don't expect cancer survivors to look like this at the end of treatment. But here's a study participant, number 696, who celebrated the end of her treatment with her family on the beach in Maine, doing handstands. And this is the power of nutrition and exercise during treatment. It sustains strength. It sustains nutritional status. You know, so to bring it back to Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, what we would like to see is that nutrition is actually a prescription written during treatment and is given to the patient. And part of that prescription, and a big important part, is the use of olive oil. So there's a lot of work to do here. We're just at the beginning of this. But I just wanted to share with you the power and the importance of olive oil and nutrition in cancer care. And in closing, I just want to acknowledge there's a whole team back home who, because of their work, that I'm here, the lucky one, to present this to you on your beautiful island and in your wonderful country. So I thank you, and efharisto.